Hey everybody, welcome back to Talking with Words. You're here with Rob,
And Ryan,
and we are joined tonight by Dennis K. Crosby. Thank you so much for joining us, Dennis.
I appreciate you guys having me. Thank you for having me.
We met Dennis at Comic Con, and you had how many panels were you on?
I did three this year. I'm trying to, doing the math real quick in my head. Yeah, did three.
Okay, and you ran one of them.
I did. So every year I try to pitch a panel at Comic Con. I've always, always got some different ideas. I like using them as a way to, connect with potential readers, but also share good information and use it as a platform to highlight other authors that are, in that particular genre, whatever the subject matter might be. I like bringing in people that have a good deal of expertise who maybe haven't been on a panel before. I think I'm a big proponent of like sharing the wealth, in the industry.
Yeah,
Um, so I like using it kind of as a showcase so that other people can find out about these great authors, but also just get good, fun, solid information about craft or whatever the subject might be.
and I mean not to boost your ego too much, but you were one of the more engaging people. We talked to you a couple times. We saw you on multiple panels. You were everyone there. I'm not surprised. I'm I'm happy to know that all the authors were very available and everyone was open to talk to everyone else. Like the
Absolutely.
Writers Coffee House kind of thing that you do. Uh,
Yeah. You, you know what's interesting? I think so. I'm from Chicago. I was there, I was born there, moved around a bit, went back there, and I was there for about almost 30 years. And I found that once I moved to San Diego, that the writing community, not that the writing community is bad in Chicago, but I couldn't find it as easily. And I think it was just because I was just at a different point in my development. But when I got to San Diego, I found that this writing community was just so robust and welcoming, and everybody's really generous. And that extends to everyone. It's not just writer to writer, it's writer to reader, it's writer to passerby. We genuinely just love what we do. We love creating these worlds, we love creating having fun with the print. And if people want to talk about that, we're happy to do it. Plus, we're all kind of big geeks too, so it's not just about writing for us, it's about practically anything.
so let's jump into that for a minute because
Yeah.
you were a private investigator
Hmm.
in Chicago.
Yeah.
You have what? How many degrees do you have at this point?
Just to
Okay,
I
you got a
when I was
master's
a
in forensic psychology,
yeah,
and then
yeah,
you
I
have
got that because I was when I was a PI, I wanted to I was using it to kind of bolster my career at the time, and I was going to use it kind of as an avenue to specialize in some other things. And I got sidetracked into that. So I got sidetracked into another industry. I got sidetracked into mental health, community mental health. So
right.
while I was in grad school, I said, let me get some experience with the stuff that I'm learning. So I stepped away from the PI world for a bit, started working in community mental health, and I've been there for about 17 years now.
That's a
But I
that's
do
a
miss the PI stuff from time to time.
that's a big. I mean, it's not a huge jump from you've got stories when you do that kind of
I've
work.
got stories.
Yeah, clearly.
Yes, definitely.
So what took you from okay, I want to write. What turned that lever all the way over to I want to be an author?
I've always enjoyed writing. I was the kid in school that would prefer the essay exam to the multiple choice or the fill in.
Word. I'm with you.
Absolutely. I was totally that because I found that I could explain things a little easier that way. I didn't have to necessarily, it was easier to memorize because I had just an active imagination. And so it's easy to kind of memorize some things if I put them into story form. So whenever there was an essay exam, I was just happy. Whenever a paper was due, I was happy. I was also a very cocky writer. So like grade school, junior high, high school, I always did well on papers. I would get A's or B's, period. And that made me think I was invincible with a pen and a piece of paper. I literally thought I could do anything.
Right.
And so it was probably around that time that I thought, one day I'm going to write a book. And I got to college and I was hanging around with a bunch of friends, and it was like our last night. We're graduating, and they like, "What are you going to do next?" I'm like, "I don't know." I graduated college. I got my undergrad degree in criminal justice, and my plan had been to go into law enforcement, but I'd also been working in retail. I was making a good chunk of change for, for that work, and I thought maybe I'd stay in that. But I also thought maybe this is the time now to start writing that novel I've been talking about in passing for a decade. Um, so I told people that, and then eventually I had to actually start doing it. And once I did, I realized I had no idea what I was doing.
That sounds very
Not a clue.
yeah, yeah, I get that. So for most writers I've talked to, uh,
Mm-hmm.
was there a turning point in what you read that you're like, okay, I want to do that. Like this hit me in a certain way.
Yeah, for sure. Still right, probably still right around that time. Graduating college, I was, like I said, working in retail, so my shifts were really weird. I'd be off, a couple days during the week. I'm working on the weekends, yada yada yada. That kind of left me with some downtime, and I wasn't studying anymore. So I'm like, what am I going to do? Um, so a couple authors actually popped up. So I started reading a lot of Anne Rice. She was pretty influential, just like the words, the way that she used them, it was so spectacular. I credit Kevin J. Anderson too with a couple things. He wrote a couple tie-in books with DC. He did Enemies and Allies, which was a story about Batman and Superman first meeting,
Yep.
and then he did uh, it wasn't Last Son of Krypton. It was, I can't remember the title exactly, but something about Krypton, and basically Last Days of Krypton. And it was about, Krypton before it exploded, like those days kind of leading up to that event.
Right.
And what he did with that, like, Superman is probably one of my favorite characters. I mean, it's he's just so iconic, and seeing what he did with those characters and the way he was able to tie that stuff in and just kind of make something up in the lore, and like, it just got me so amped up. I'm like, man, I would love to be able to do something like that, either with an existing character or create something of my own. So, they those two, Timothy Zahn with his Heir to the Empire series and Star Wars,
Yep.
all of that stuff just got my imagination going, and it really got me motivated to, one, to read more, because I'd kind of stopped reading for a while because I was, working full time, I was in school full time. But it certainly got me started reading more, appreciating what it took to write those stories. And then eventually, I got that push to learn more about the craft, and, finally put my own pen to paper, and start making some stories up.
Which apparently you're doing something right because that's legacy. How many awards? It's 2021 readers favorite book, publishers readers favorite book, supernatural paranormal book of the year award. You won a lot of awards for your first
That
book.
that Yeah, that took me by surprise. That the whole thing around that was just, I wanted. So the other degree I have is in, I have a Master of Fine Arts in Creative Writing, and that book, That's Legacy, was actually my master's thesis. So I
Oh,
wrote it, as part of school. And once I graduated, I said to myself, I really like this story. I'd love to see it on a bookshelf. And so I took it and I started working with other editors, and trying to figure out how to really make that thing truly, like, fully marketable. I had no thoughts about it winning awards. I mean, that wasn't my thing. I was just trying to get this book and get this story down, because I love these characters. I love this world. I wanted to get it out. Um, and it came together nicely. So when those awards came in, I was like, really? Okay, other people like this besides my mom. That's cool. Um,
vindication.
you know, all those hours put in, all
Yeah.
those thousands of words, it felt pretty good.
So let's talk about Death's Legacy. There's three books. Uh,
3 books so far, working on the fourth now.
so you mix a lot of it's a genre masher, and
Yeah,
I'm a huge Greek mythology fan.
me
So
too.
a lot of that, once I started hearing some of those names pop, I was like, oh shit, okay, because you do something very different with this, and I haven't not read a book that has a the different versions of the death based on Thanatos, and the way you do it, it feels almost like a fresh take on like the vampire kind of thing, but it's its
Hmm.
own different thing. And I kept thinking about a TV show called Dead Like Me. Have you
Yeah,
ever
yeah,
seen that?
I've seen it.
Uh, totally different than that. If you've seen that show, that's not what this
Yeah,
book
yeah.
is. Very different. But uh props to you for just taking that character because you have the Grim Reaper, you have the scythe and the cloak. That's what most
Hmm.
people see that.
Right.
So giving it and giving it a female role,
Yeah.
uh yeah, it was a good spin. I really enjoyed it. We've been pushing through your books pretty hard the last
Yeah.
couple of weeks, and
I appreciate that.
no complaints on this end whatsoever.
Thank you.
Yeah,
You
that's
know, when you talk about Greek mythology and about me being a nerd and a geek, I own those. I absolutely own those. When I was oh man, maybe 9, 8, 9 years old, I saw the original Clash of the Titans.
Yeah.
Um, I saw it over the stretch of one summer 22 times. Like every time it was on, I was watching that movie. And it terrified me as a kid, especially the Gorgon. I mean, the way that it was shot, you look at it now, you're like, oh wow, this is nothing. But when you're a kid, it's like, oh, and you're watching it like in the basement of your grandma's house with the lights off with your cousins. Um, it took me by surprise, but I've always loved that mythology. I've always loved this idea of um
You were talking about the God of Death.
yeah. So Clash of the Titans, love mythology, and all of this. When I wrote the book, I was really kind of channeling my own fear of death, right? And so as I was writing it, it started to take on a little bit of life of its own because I start understanding more about what this character is and what's driving her, and realizing that this isn't really my story anymore. It's her story. It's about how she needs to get through certain traumas and understand things, and I've always wanted to incorporate. When I started writing, I knew my stories would have some type of supernatural element, something that was otherworldly. Um, I also knew that it would kind of involve mythology, but different types of mythology, right? And so in my world, there's only really one set of gods, but they're just viewed differently in different civilizations.
Right.
So you've got Zeus in Greece, you've got another thunder god in another country. So it's all the same person. They're just viewed differently by those particular individuals, by those people. In that case, it helps me kind of ground it down into one, so I'm not like spread out all over the world.
Yeah.
Um, and it allows me to kind of touch on different areas, in history. Um, and blending all of that, putting it kind of in a modern setting, giving it a lot of modern angst, but then blending in the old world mythology and those fears that go with that. It was just a lot of fun to put that together.
It works out really well.
yeah.
Thank you.
It's and you. I think it was in the second book. Um, you start mixing in some other elements that I didn't really expect. Like I know there was a vampire reference, but you start mixing
Hmm.
witches and people kind of shifting into that kind of same
Oh yeah,
world. But most people, when I think Greek mythology, witches is not the first thing I think to go with that. And you start mixing in some of these other random elements, and it was,
absolutely.
um, you know, what got you to do that? What
I've had
kind of drove
characters
that?
that I've had characters I've been writing about for a long time, and I've wanted to find ways to introduce them, to the world. My Best Legacy was not my first written book; it was my first published book. I did write a vampire novel prior to that. It's absolutely awful. Um, it needs it needs rewrites in the worst way. But that main character, who I mentioned in all the books, London James, she is a vampire.
Yeah.
She's the vampire, the main character in those novels, and so I kind of use Death's Legacy and Cassidy Simmons' world as a way to introduce some of those characters that I've had on paper and have tried to introduce to the world, but just couldn't find a way. I like the idea of living in a world where everything is possible, and the world at large doesn't know about them, but there is this subculture that exists of different types of gods, monsters, creatures of legend. And this was a perfect opportunity, I thought, to kind of bring that stuff in. You talked about, I kind of go into witchcraft a bit as well, and I incorporate the goddess of witchcraft, Hecate. She's a Greek god, she's a Titan, and she plays a very prominent role in what's happening in this series, at least in this story arc. Um, so again, just kind of pulling from all of those things, but still kind of staying rooted to what I love the most, which is that mythology and finding ways to bring all these other folks in, and in some cases, kind of making different types of beings and creatures on my own, but still making sure they fit into this world pretty easily.
Yeah, and when you do Greek mythology and you do it, I mean, we've seen it done a lot of different ways. I really
Hmm.
enjoy your version of it because you are introducing new characters that don't exist. You are
Yeah,
uh, doing mashups, if you will, of different archetypes of that mythology.
yeah,
I know, like Neil Gaiman did American Gods, and he did the other version that you just said you didn't want to do, where it's thousands of them across the
yeah,
board,
yeah.
and it gets messy, right?
It can get confusing, and I'm not the type to. I don't want to have like this board of characters because I'll get confused and I will mix some things up. I'll forget something. In looking at the three books as I work on the fourth, I know that there's some elements that I either wish I had added or didn't add, and I've kind of got to retcon some things. It won't be a problem, but I wish I had the forethought to consider those things. Even when you plot out a series, there's still some things that you think about later on that you kind of wish you had put in the beginning, and that's kind of where I'm at now. So yeah, I didn't want to have like this whole gang of folks. It wasn't this. I remember watching Game of Thrones, the first
Oh yeah.
season,
Yep.
the first episode, and not knowing who anybody was because there were just so many folks being thrown at me. Eventually, you kind of get used to them and you understand who they are, but I didn't want to start it out that way. I wanted to kind of pare it down, make sure that there were a few key folks that you got to know, and then you sprinkle in some other people, as you go along. Um, and especially with these immortal characters, you're going to hear people talked about, but you might not ever see them. Some you will, some you might not. But again, it's really about making sure that the core group is the focus of the story, so that folks can really stay engaged and not get lost along the way.
And I mean, I think it helps a lot that you have your core characters that are experiencing it with the reader.
Hmm.
Sandra's journey, she's kind of telling us as she figures this shit out because it's bizarre to her too. And then
Absolutely.
we're reading it, we're going, "Oh, that's a thing," and she's like, "Oh, that's a thing." You're like, okay, so we're on the same page.
I was gonna say for somebody like he knows Greek mythology way better than I do,
Yeah.
and so for somebody who's not as familiar with, all the different gods and everything, it was really easy to follow and really easy to stay engaged and
Awesome.
entertained without getting lost in 50 different gods and all kinds
Yeah.
of eternals, immortals, and what.
Yeah.
Um,
It's easy to do too. It's you can get lost in it because you get so excited to be in that world. You're like, ooh, I'm thinking of this guy. I'm gonna add this one. I'm gonna do this. And you're like, wait a minute, hold on. Let's slow down here.
yeah,
What would Hermes do? Hermes going to sit home because we got to do these other three people right now. He's going to wait it out. Do
Just
you
gonna wait it out.
have,
He might pop up here, and you never know. Some people will make an appearance. Some will just be whispers. But yeah, it, another series that I read the Percy Jackson series too, and that influenced me a lot because again, yeah, I love mythologies. I don't care what age range it's for. I'm going to read it. I'm going to watch it.
yeah.
And there were a lot of influences from that. There's a lot of influences from Supernatural, one of my favorite shows, and they touch on everything
Oh,
over the
yeah.
course of 16, 17 seasons. So but they lay it out like over time. It's not all just hitting you at once. And so that's kind of what this will do. This particular story arc that she's on right now, will end with book four. But I don't want to. I'm not going to be done with Cassidy Simmons. I like that character so much that I want to see her get into more trouble. And so, we'll see what else happens after book four. But this story arc will end, and then we'll see. We'll see where we go from there, and we'll start adding other those more of those characters that people have heard of. There might be more appearances from Zeus. Maybe Hera will make an appearance. Maybe Hermes will make an appearance. Uh, there's just it's just wide open for more exploration.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a lot to work with, and then you've built a world on top of that that is compelling
Mm-hmm.
enough that you've got another whole set of things to work with.
Exactly. Exactly.
Do you have do you have an end game in mind for this series, or do you have this as a I'm gonna see how I mean, how does your writing style work? Are you just gonna see where it goes?
I love this character. I really do, and I've gotten a lot of good feedback about her
Yeah,
from male and female readers. Um, I've gotten a lot of feedback about her from members of the LGBTQ community as well. They identify with her a bit, and they appreciate the fact that I didn't like stereotype anything. Like this is a real woman experiencing real events in her life, um, and it's not just trivialized. That she has a girlfriend or that she's dated men in the past or anything that goes on with her. It's real. It's not just made up and to sensationalize it. So I love her. I love her growth. I love the way that she sees the world. So I do want to continue on with her until people tell me they're tired of her. So, like I said, this particular arc will end with the fourth book that I'm working on now, but we'll start a new story arc, and there'll probably be like a series of standalones after this. There might be some duologies, um, but like I said, with this particular universe, there's so much I can kind of throw at her and see how she deals with it.
yeah. That's I mean that's I'm looking forward to it personally. That's
Thank
good
you.
news for me as a
Yeah,
as a reader and now a fan. That's good news for me.
I appreciate that.
What made you want to make her an empath?
Uh, Partly because I feel empathic toward others. I mean, the work that I do in social service, I absorb, I feel a lot of the angst that folks are feeling. The population that I've been working with has largely been those with mental health challenges, substance abuse disorder, chronic homelessness, food insecurity. And it's hard to go home after working 8-hour day with that community and not take home what they're feeling, not
Sure.
feel all those things. I'm also, and I say this because I say it's because I'm a Taurus, but it's probably less that, just more because I'm a decent human being, I think. Um,
Yeah.
I am empathetic toward others and the plight that they go through, and I know, like for me, it is a challenge to go to things that are really emotional, like funerals, weddings, like a lot of emotion. Really, it feels overwhelming for me at times. Um, and so I wondered, what would that be like if I had a character that was like, you know, turned up to 100.
Yeah.
Um, what would it be like for her? How would she react going into a funeral or a hospital, knowing that she can literally feel the emotions of each and every person in that room? And I thought it would be a good kind of side story. She's a reaper. She has to deal with escorting souls to the afterlife, but also she feels the emotions of everybody on the planet. Not at the same time, of course, but it's a lot. It's a lot to take on. I just thought it was an interesting extra piece to her story, and it just felt natural to kind of write about that.
Yeah. I really liked and I mean going into this cold after we talked in California,
Mm-hmm.
I'd liked, you start off this is an empath and then you just get deeper and deeper and deeper into what Cassandra has. She's got a lot of shit going on in her life.
Got a lot going on.
Yeah. I really like that choice to do that. And us with your background, it made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
We had met you before, so we kind of knew at least somewhat where you were coming from.
Hmm.
I enjoyed that we're going to take this person that is incredibly powerful, but also she empathizes with everyone.
Yeah. I think that's the best part about fiction, especially about like genre fiction. And when you've got those characters who have these otherworldly abilities, the best part about them is the humanity in them, right? They can do anything, they can be anywhere, go anywhere. But what is it that keeps them grounded? If they're good, it's their humanity, right? It's the ability to empathize with others. It's the ability to see hope and to see joy and to enjoy and to kind of relish that. And so I like kind of exploring that part a little bit more. The fact that her empathic powers are amped up, I think it just kind of creates even more of a challenge for her to try to be good, to try to be a part of a world that is the way it is. The
Right.
world as it is a challenge for people just in general, right? And so imagine if now your senses are heightened and you're extra sensitive to everything that goes on. How does that keep you one from integrating into a world that's what you desperately want? She wants to be a part of the world. She wants to feel like she's a part of what's going on, but she can't because everything overwhelms her so much. So how does she navigate that? She's desperate to find that peace, that connection to humanity because she wants it for herself. She sees it around her, and now she's got to kind of navigate this world and figure out how to reach that, how to attain that, how can I be a part of this despite what's going on, in this shadowy world that I deal with. So yeah, it's I don't know. I've always loved those stories. You see, like in the latest Superman movie, people are talking about his humanity and the fact that he cares. He cares about, everything from an animal in the middle of the street to every human being on a planet. That's a beautiful thing.
So I was about to say the exact same thing because I didn't catch the Superman until you said it earlier.
Hmm.
Very Superman. She is
Yeah.
trying to do the right thing in every situation, no matter how
Hmm.
difficult it is. She just can't help it. Like you wrote a scene in Death's Legacy that is her going up to a hospital and
Yeah.
that dread, like you sold me on her empathic ability and wanting to be a good person in that scene. Like
Yeah.
that was all it took of if I get closer, I'm going to pass out because I
Yeah.
all of this is hitting me and I can't help everyone. That was the
That
vibe.
was the that was the very first scene I wrote. That was actually in the original version. That was the opening chapter, because I was throwing it right in, and I started working with an editor who said, you know what, you might want to go into something a little different. Maybe start with an action scene first and set her up that way, and then ease on into this. I'm like, okay, I just don't want to lose it. She goes, no, no, you don't want to lose this. It's telling. It really shows her pain and her angst.
Yeah.
Like she wants nothing more than to be there for someone that she loves, but she can't. It brings her physical pain no matter how hard she tries. And yeah, I love that. Like I said, it was the first scene I wrote. I really enjoyed that part.
Yeah, that was a strong one. So good call making that. I mean, that's one that hit me immediately. I was like, okay, I need to make a note of this because that scene sold her, and it also
Yeah.
on the other end, Azrael, who I really enjoyed, him just being he had a one track mind. He had one thing he wanted to do, no matter who got in
Hmm.
his way, he was going to do it. Uh, the foil of that worked phenomenally.
Yeah, villains I've come to enjoy a lot more, especially as been writing my own. And I think it is, sometimes we forget that even in the villain, there's a bit of humanity there. It's twisted, but they have a goal, right? They have something they want to accomplish, something they want to achieve, and there's a reason for it. And
Right.
so understanding the reason, it might make them a little bit more, might make the reader a little bit more sympathetic. You still might not like them. You're probably not going to like them, but on some level, you kind of understand where they're coming from. And so writing him and his backstory was a lot of fun because, like you said, they are flip sides of the same coin in some regard. They both want something very specific for themselves because they believe that's what's going to make them happy. Just a matter of how they're going about doing it.
Yeah, 100%. And
Yeah.
I mean, and with that arc, the first book, I know when we were reading it, we always chat with each other while we're reading because we'll be like, okay, we're
Mm-hmm.
reading this, let's go back and forth. And the first book, it was a lot to digest in one book, and you had the flashbacks, which you carry on. Uh, the second book, I was waiting for a PI personally, just because we had talked. Second book,
Yeah,
you get a PI immediately. Well, I guess he's not, you know, but
not fully, but yeah, he is. I, I, uh, I don't know if anyone caught it. I kind of threw in a little homage to Harry Dresden. Very, very subtle. So you got to be on the Dresden stuff and know
yeah,
where he's from and all that
the
to
Dresden
feel it.
Files.
But
Yeah,
yeah, but yeah, he's a PI, just a little. He does things a little differently, and he's going to have his own story at some point. In fact, I just wrote a short story that just came out with him in it. Came out a couple weeks ago, and he's another fun character, Alex Frost. He's yeah, he's a fun guy.
Yeah.
you write fun characters. Like,
I write characters that I can imagine being. Um, Alex Frost is a character that I can totally see myself just living that life and being a PI. I sometimes miss that job, that world. But I also, like magic and and fantasy. He is like the perfect blend of that. So is Cassidy actually. I mean, she's a PI. She specializes in locating people, but she's that's part of the job that I held as well. So, I still touch on those things, just not as much in these stories. In the future, they'll certainly come out a little bit more. But yeah, it's the perfect blend for me. There's two worlds that I really, really enjoy. I like mystery, I like the fantasy, and anytime I can put those together, I will.
and I mean, I think you do also a good job when going back to the Greek mythology with all of this. The Greek gods are assholes. Like,
Yes.
they're not fun to hang out with. They use
Or
people.
not.
You're a means to an end, and that's it. And
Yep.
in this, you have a lot of that, and then you have a lot of the back end of that of why are they doing that?
Yeah.
What's the end game? And bringing humanity not through them necessarily, but through the people that they affect. And I
Hmm.
think that tells a clearer picture of them, just not villains necessarily, but they're not doing what everyone else is doing. They're on a different track.
Yeah.
And the way
They're
you
definitely
write,
flawed.
yeah, oh yo, yeah. I mean,
That's the key, right? Is them being flawed, and I think that's another thing that's really interesting about the Greek gods is that when you look at them, they are they are more human in many regards than the humans are because they feel everything. They feel the jealousy, the anger, the rage, all of those things. They just have omnipotent power and they abuse that to let go of whatever they're feeling. Humans don't have that luxury. We've got to figure those things out differently. And so exploring why Greek gods do those things, again, it doesn't make them any less assholish, if that's a word. It is now.
it is now, yeah.
Um, but it does get you to understand to some degree what drives them. And I think that's the key. There's been a kind of a shift in villains. And I talk about this in a workshop I do on how to create villains. There's been a shift, I think, in the last several decades about villains aren't just bad to be bad, right? There's
Right.
something that drives them. There's some catalyst that made them go on the path that they did. And I like exploring that part. That's why I use backstory so much because I can't put all that stuff in just talking about it during the present time. You got to kind of see how it unraveled,
Right.
how it unfolded. And so, I use backstory for that particular reason. And I think one of my favorite character arcs for villains was Lex Luthor, Michael Rosenbaum's Lex Luthor on
A
Smallville.
Smallville, yeah.
Like you saw him from the first season to the end, you saw that arc, you saw what drove him, you saw his transformation from someone who was just, seeking some type of validation from his father to seeking a friendship to just completely being twisted and driven by
Right.
one particular goal. And I kind of model a lot of my villains after that. It's like, where'd you come from? What started that? What kicked this off? And why are you going in this direction now so hard? And how do we stop you? Can we stop you? Should we stop you? Those are all questions that can be answered along the way, which makes them like so much fun to write. Just as much fun as the protagonist.
Yeah,
And
I really like the way you pace out your character building of,
Thank you.
like you said, you a little bit what's going on, a little bit
Mm-hmm.
of backstory from 700 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
what's going on. Let's take it back 2,000 years ago. Um, and so you never really know the full extent of that character, till the very end.
Yeah.
Um, but it leaves you just enough. All right, let me read one more chapter before I put it down today.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it was really there was, and like he said, we go back and forth as we're reading because at least recently we're usually reading the same books at about the same
Mm-hmm.
time. And I don't know, it's probably 8 or 10 chapters in. I texted him. I go, "This is great, but I'm still not sure what's going on. I think I know, but um, it was just really interesting the way you go back and forth with some of your characters and give just enough to keep everybody engaged.
Mm-hmm.
And then, 4 more chapters down the road, we're taking a hard right turn
yeah, they
somewhere
get the
else. I'm like,
third
oh
act hammer drop. Yeah.
shit, didn't see that coming. Uh, I think it's awesome.
Some
And
of that is to keep me in line. Because when I'm writing a story and I got an idea, I'm like, I can't wait to get to it. Sometimes I found in like early drafts, I was just kind of data dumping so I can get to that point.
Yeah.
And so adding in those backstories, it helps keep me in line so that I don't jump too far. Also gives me an opportunity really to set things up, for that hammer drop. And the other piece is like I think the pacing is important and then splitting it up, right? It's a way for me, it's kind of a tool that I use. A lot of writers do it. I'm not the only one, obviously, but where I'll give you something in chapter 4, I'm going to end that on a little bit of a cliffhanger. And in chapter 5, we're talking about something else. Chapter 6, talking about something else again. Chapter 7, I'll come back to where chapter 4 ended. And then at the end of that chapter 7, I'm going to give you another cliffhanger. And then we're going to wrap up chapter 5, and then so on and so forth, so that it keeps you turning the pages. I gotta make you want to see more.
Yeah.
And I think it works well with the pacing, but also just keeping the reader engaged and making sure they don't fall into a lull of whatever that particular storyline is. I gotta have you kind of moving around.
And your villains made me think. I don't remember. Probably a bunch of actors have said it, but I know I've heard it a few times. Of the villain, the villain never thinks of the bad guy.
Exactly.
And your flashbacks give the villain that side of the coin,
Mm-hmm.
and you see the motivation. So there were definitely times I texted him, I was like, "Fuck this guy," and then later I was like, "Hold on, I kind of get it."
he's not that
Like,
not that terrible.
I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
how many years, how many decades, how many centuries have they had to be petty? Uh, yeah, it kind of checks out.
That's the fun part, right? That's the when you start identifying with the villain, you're like, what's wrong with me? Yeah, have I been living my life foul or what?
You
Well,
obviously you're right, no matter what.
I jokingly have been saying since Avengers Endgame that we might owe Thanos a bit of an apology. Maybe he wasn't so out base.
Maybe that guy had some good ideas.
He might have been onto something.
So let me ask you about you. And correct me if any of this is wrong because I do a deep dive on everybody that comes on the
Yeah.
podcast. And you moved to San Diego and
Hmm.
started going to the writers' workshops, the coffee house.
Yeah.
Was that the Mayberry version?
Hmm.
Okay. So how did you guys end up? Because we saw you and Mayberry obviously hooks us up. We're buddies, but
Yeah,
you were on a lot of his panels and everything else. How did that all come about?
it's a very strange thing. So February 2014 is the exact month I decided I'm leaving Chicago, coming to San Diego. It was also the same month that I had introduced to Patient Zero, by
Yeah.
Jonathan
Oh,
Mayberry. It's the start of his Joe Ledger series. And I got it on Audible, so I got introduced to Ledger, but I also got introduced to
Ray
Ray
Bradbury
Porter, who's
or Ray Porter,
an
sorry.
amazing voice. Um, and so I started just loving that series. I devoured that the first few books in like a month and a half. And I started, kind of like you said you were doing with me. I was doing a deep dive on him and started learning more about Jonathan Maber and his writing style and his books. And at some point found out that he'd actually moved to San Diego. I'm like, man, that'd be really weird if I ran into him. I could say hi and thank him for these amazing novels.
Yeah.
So I moved here, and a few months after I moved here, I saw on his Facebook page that he was launching this writers' coffee house meeting, which will happen the first Sunday of each month at a local bookstore. We hold it at Mysterious Galaxy Bookstore. And I'm like, oh, this is weird. Maybe I was meant to move here. Maybe I will get to finally meet him and say hi. And sure enough, there he was. And it was the inaugural meeting was amazing. It was just a large group of writers, all different levels, just talking about the craft. And we started kind of, I started going to them each month. And over time, he and I developed a friendship. Found out we had the same birthday. That was kind of a lock in. And
Oh yeah.
wow.
yeah, we're both May 18th guys. And, that kind of keyed us into each other. I was going to his signings. I was asking questions. And just like I said, over time, we really developed a good friendship. Um, and then I think he's one of those authors that is very generous with his time and his knowledge, right? He will take the time to answer any question you have. No question is a dumb question. He will guide you the right way in terms of craft and the business of publishing. um, he's just really been kind of a phenomenal mentor, unofficial mentor, but a mentor nonetheless. And so when I finally got published and started, getting more involved in the writing community, I'd reach out to him and say, "Hey, I'm proposing this panel. What do you think about being on?" He's like, "Yeah, sure." He goes, "I'm doing one too. You want to be on?" I'm like, "Yes, I do." Um, yeah, so we just kind of connected that way, and um, I'm actually going to be interviewing him at BoucherCon, which is a mystery writers convention in New Orleans. It's going to be in New Orleans in about 2 weeks, so I'll be there. He's one of the guests of honor, so I'll get to do his guest of honor intro. Um,
I think L's going to be there as well. I
Yeah.
think I saw
Elle's going to be there.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a few folks from San Diego that are going. It was here in San Diego a few years ago, and I had a phenomenal time. So I can't wait to go back again. Plus, it's in New Orleans, so that doesn't suck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a fun city.
Yeah, I'll find a few things to do down there.
Speaking of fun cities, uh, we were talking about your bourbon selections for your book.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Uh, I know that I don't drink that much anymore, but I was a big bourbon guy for a very long time. My brother's a
yeah,
bourbon
yeah.
guy. Ryan's a
Yeah.
bourbon
I'm a
guy.
bourbon guy. And we talked bourbon a little
Nice.
bit after
Yeah.
your the panel you were leading, whatever that
Hmm.
was, Friday night
The PI panel. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, the PI panel. Um, you shift a lot to tons of different bourbons throughout the first couple books in there. Uh,
Yes.
is that just random? Like I know you prefer Blanton's, but it's a little pricey for an everyday bourbon. A 9 a.m.
It
bourbon
is.
you referenced. Uh, but like Elijah Craig, there was one you gave me in San Diego. It started with an S that said you recently switched to it.
Sable.
What was it?
Sable bourbon.
Sable bourbon.
Sable.
Okay.
Yeah. I I like a lot of different bourbons. Blanton's is my favorite. That's without question. Um, Sable is quickly becoming, another a top two. But I also like Brothers Bond bourbon. Um, I like I like Elijah Craig. Cassidy, that's her favorite bourbon.
Yeah.
Elijah Craig
But
and Vicodin.
with a little Vicodin
Yeah.
chaser.
Yeah.
I do bounce around because with each book I was sampling a different bourbon for a while. So but I try to keep hers the same. Other folks kind of they know her what her preference is. So, you're a bourbon guy. People always recommend stuff to you as a
Oh, yeah.
bourbon guy.
Oh yeah.
And that's the same for her. People will kind of try to introduce something new to her and she'll like, yeah, it's fine. Okay. And she knows the good stuff, but she's got the one that she likes.
Yeah.
So she can appreciate people drinking Blanton's or spending a few $1,000s on a bottle of Pappy. Um, but she still has the one that really works for her. So I will sample. I got 2 bottles of Blanton's for my birthday in 2024. One is still unopened. The one that is open, I'm only about halfway through. I take my time with that bad boy because it is so expensive and so hard to get.
Yeah.
So I
I
got
got
to have the extras as kind of the everyday stuff. And like I said, I'll bounce around because some are sweeter than others. Some have a different flavor profile, and I might not be feeling a particular profile that day. So I do like to jump around a little bit.
yeah. I've still got an unopened bottle of Blanton's and an unopened bottle of Blanton's Gold sitting at the house right now. And I have been very choosy as to when I drink the open bottles.
Yes,
So
absolutely. You got to with that one. Take your
yeah.
time.
Oddly enough, Elijah Craig is one of my go-tos
Yeah,
on a regular basis. It's delicious.
absolutely,
I see a bottle of
absolutely.
Makers in the background there.
That was another birthday present. And I haven't even opened it yet. It's a big bottle, so
Yeah.
you know that's when it comes to like just like whiskeys and ryes. I like a High West, and I drink Writer's Tears Irish whiskey. I use that as kind of a celebratory drink. So if I finish a short story or finish a novel, if I finish something that is um, you know big in my writing world, I'll celebrate with a little writer's tears. If it's something really monumental, I might upgrade to the blend, but
Crack the Blanton's.
usually it's the writer's tears.
So let's talk about the Dread Coast for a minute.
Oh,
This is this out
it comes out tomorrow, actually,
Comes
tomorrow?
out
Okay,
tomorrow.
I knew we got an early
August 22nd.
Yeah, they had a number of early copies at Comic Con, and we snagged the first two on Wednesday. Yeah, Wednesday night when we got there.
I appreciate
So
that.
I
Yeah.
don't know if our viewers can see this, but Dennis signed me a heart that does not look like a butt on this. I don't know if you remember me asking you to personalize it.
Yes.
uh, your short in this, uh, it's exactly the kind of short I wanted. It felt very like early '90s Stephen King, but with your flavor on it because you had
Mhm.
again you had the Egyptian god, you had some of that mixed in with it. Uh,
Yeah.
Great short story.
Thank
Bravo.
you.
It was
Thank
it
you.
was it was fun to read.
I
Uh,
appreciate that.
this also all the proceeds go to. I'll let you explain it.
Yeah. So, late last year, a couple of us had been talking about getting together and putting together an anthology, but we didn't really know how we would do it, what we would do. We just kind of throwing the idea around. And then the LA wildfires happened. And I mean, happened. They destroyed just entire sections of the city. And so, as we were continuing to think about anthologies, the idea came up maybe we should do a charity anthology where we can donate those proceeds toward wildfire relief because wildfires happen, but those folks, those homes, all that stuff was just absolutely destroyed. And those people are displaced, and recovery from that is going to be long term. And so we wanted to be able to do something to help our neighbors to the north, recover from that. And so I worked with Casey Griffin, and she and I, we said, okay, we'll co-edit this thing, and we struck up a partnership with No Bad Books Press. They're a small press here in the San Diego area, and we all got together and talked about it. It's like, yeah, if we can do this, if we can find people that are willing to take no money, donate some stories to this, we can get this thing published, get it out, and we can donate those proceeds to help the people in need. And so we reached out to our friends, and I don't think there was any hesitation from anybody. Like they were on it. They were like, Yes, whatever you need. Um, Jonathan Mayberry's in it. You know, I reached out to him. I said, hey, we're doing this anthology to help with wildfire relief. He said, whatever you need, I'm in. I got it done. Like there was no hesitation. Scott Sigler, Peter Kleins, these are all New York Times bestsellers. These guys, you know, they got some skin in the game, and they were right on top of it and said, yes, we will help with this. So yeah, we got those. There's 24 stories in it total. Um, each one takes place in Southern California. We wanted to kind of, you know, set it somewhere so that there's a common theme throughout each story. Um, but because we're all kind of that horror thriller genre, we wanted to, give it a little shadowy taste of SoCal. And I'm so pleased with how it came out. I think I read each story. We edited all of them, and they didn't need a whole lot in terms of editing. The stories were really solid.
Yeah.
We kind of guide some folks here and there, make a few edits here and there, but man, those folks delivered. And I think this anthology is probably I'm proud of it. It's my first ever anthology as an editor. Um, I never thought it would be this. I thought I'd be doing that, down the road after I had a few more books under my belt, but I had some great partners on this. We had great authors helping us with this, and just really proud of the whole project, and really looking forward to being able to help support those in need in the LA County area.
And it's awesome, and it's I mean, like you said, that everyone was just like, yes,
Yeah,
let's help who we can help.
yeah. There was, like I said, no hesitation. There was like, yep, I'm in. Yes, when do you need it? I'm
Yeah.
like, hey, this is our drop dead. Yep, done. And we wanted to we were highlighting Southern Cal. We also wanted to feature writers in Southern California as well. So everybody that's in that is from the surrounding area. Um, because there's a lot of talent here. There's some people in there, this is their first story. And the quality of the care with which they took to write those stories was absolutely phenomenal. Again, it's kind of going back to that thing I said earlier about, when I do panels, I like to have a mix. I like to have people that have been in the business for a long time. I like to have people that have been in a short time, because there is a lot of information, a lot of knowledge, in that circle. And I think people can gain a lot. Folks that have been in it for a while, they can share what their experiences have been, and folks that are new can relate. People that are in the audience that are just starting out can relate to them a lot easier too. So I think there's just something in that for everybody.
And I think, especially you did the Writers Coffee House panel at Comic Con.
Mhm.
That was the first one that we met you at. And to your point, it was very interesting to me that you had, I mean, Elle, her first book,
Yep.
he was a first time author. And then you had, to your point, Jonathan Mayberry, Scott Sigler, Peter Klein, these heavy hitters on here.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And your book was 2021 was Legacy, correct?
2020.
2020.
Yeah.
So 5 years. So you've got these different time. So and I was taking notes like a kid in college during that thing, uh, listening to everyone's answer because you were all coming from a different place. And
Yeah.
that in itself, as a writer, uh, it was very, very informative of what someone like Mayberry
I
knows. But yeah,
yeah, I find that incredibly helpful to have different points of view, all valid points of view.
yeah,
My experience just starting out is vastly different from Jonathan's, right? It's vastly different from Scott's. It's vastly different from L's, but they're all valid, and I think everybody comes at the answers, through their lens, and everyone listening can relate in some way and find a way that kind of works for them. I always take it back to those PI days. When I first started as a PI, I came in with nothing. Like, they train you on the job, but part of the training is you work with a different PI throughout the company. So I worked with a couple guys in Chicago. I then went out to the Minnesota office. I worked with a couple guys there. I worked with a guy down in Indianapolis. Worked with a couple guys in Michigan, so that you can learn the different styles of the job. And through that, you find your own style. You find what really works for you, and you make that your own. Same with writing. You get a lot of advice and a lot of different perspectives, but ultimately, to find your voice, you take all of those and you find what really works for you.
Right.
I'm not going to crank out 4 novels a year, 17 million short stories, graphic novels, and work on my TV show like Jonathan's going to do.
Yeah.
Can't do that. Even if I were able to get to that point in my career, that's still a lot for me. It still feels overwhelming. But I was able to take some of the things that he's done in his career and kind of find a way to incorporate them into mine. Same with Scott. Scott is just amazing. This dude is working 24/7. I
Nonstop.
think I don't know what day he takes off days to watch the Lions, and I think that might be it. Um, but just his output, the stuff that Peter does, the stuff that L does. I've learned a lot from every author that I have encountered here, and it's all kind of fed and taught me how to do the job, but also how to strengthen my own voice and the work that I put out.
Right. Right. You're flexing that muscle, and you've got your
Exactly.
triggers, you've got your spotters.
So,
Mm-hmm.
kind of on that same note, and Jonathan referenced it at the coffee house, and he's told us before to
Mm-hmm.
get prepped for the day, to get in the zone to write. He recites poetry out loud for like 45 minutes an hour.
Yep.
Out of curiosity, what do you do to get in the zone, so to speak, to sit down and work on the next death novel, or the next Cassidy Simmons story?
Yeah, I got to get out of the